But because of this inadvertent mistake, the jury nevertheless read that or had the opportunity to read that line, that sentence. The recording was redacted, so they didn't hear anything about that. When we broke yesterday, having completed the direct examination, Mr. Shapiro, you said you wanted to think about what to do about this. So what do you want to do?
I've asked Mr. Deacon to prepare a unredacted audio recording of the interview with only the part where the name of the son is redacted. So the invocation of the right to counsel is in there, and I intend to play basically the last few minutes of the interview with that in it. And in the course of my cross-examination or at the end of it, whatever. And I suggest that that the jury be informed that there was a discrepancy between the audio recording and the transcript, and that's now been corrected, and the exhibit has been corrected, and that the portion of the recording will be replayed at some point.
Okay,
Basically,
that portion is basically the very end.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Well, I'm going to play a few pages leading up to it,
right.
but nevertheless.
But when I talk about the discrepancy, would it be fair to say that basically the last couple of sentences were cut off from the recording, something like that? That is, the discrepancy is just that, cutting off the last couple of sentences?
Right. And the last portion of the tape, or because of that, the last portion of the tape will be replayed at some point.
Okay. So, Mr. Deacon.
My only position is that when you say that that the last part of the tape was cut off, I'd ask you to instruct that it was redacted, and that because of the discrepancy between the transcript and the tape, the parties have agreed that you should hear the portion that had been redacted. Otherwise, it's going to look like there's some mysterious.
I don't want it to look as if this is a big thing, right. A major thing where they get it's some kind of, as Mr. Deacon said, something more there than they're really meant to be. But I'm struggling to how to do that. You say I should tell them it was redacted.
The parties had agreed to redaction of the audio, but there was an error, and they received a transcript that had the redactions. The parties have now agreed that because of that situation, they should have the unredacted audio.
I don't really agree with that. For one thing, I'm not sure that jurors even understand what a redaction is. And
okay.
my position is, as I suggested, that they just be informed that there was a discrepancy.
I think discrepancy makes it sound mysterious, as if why did the Commonwealth try to introduce something that didn't have all the right audio?
Okay. I see both of your points. I don't think it should be made into a big thing, like somehow the transcript, there's more errors than they can possibly figure out between the transcript they got and the recording. That's some mystery that somebody's trying to hide something. I think, on the other hand, to go in a long explanation about redaction and agreement of parties to redact, and now we're unredacting, I think also makes it into a big deal, and jurors might wonder why all that. So I guess what I'm inclined to do is say that the parties noticed that the last few sentences of the conversation were cut off in the recording, and that's been corrected. It was cut off purposely, but
right. I think that's fine. Right?
But okay.
As long as it's termed the parties, so that it's clear that it's not something sneaky, then I think that's fine.
It was an inadvertent error. Yeah. That's fair to say. But I'm going to say, as a result of an inadvertent error, kind of thinking aloud, because the inadvertent error was in the transcript, not in cutting off the recording. I'll figure something out. I'll make it clear that this is not the fault of either party. There was just this, the recording was cut off. These last couple sentences that were in the transcript are not on the recording. That's been corrected. They're going to hear the recording. At some point, they're going to hear that portion again.
Fine.
Okay. So, Mr. Shapiro, in making this request and making this decision, you are, to some degree, going against case law, which says that a jury should not be informed. The defendant is invoking his right to a lawyer.
I understand.
And is this a strategic decision on your part, basically?
It is.
Okay. And you've talked to your client and discussed this with him? Okay. I just want the record to be clear. I understand and certainly understand your position, but it is a little different from what the SJC has instructed as to what juries should hear. Okay. We will, have you finished your direct examination?
I have, Your Honor.
So we'll be going right into cross-examination. Are there any other issues we need to talk about?
Only one very minor issue, Your Honor, which is once the Commonwealth rests, what I'd ask for is about 10-minute recess because I had some difficulty printing out in a timely fashion. The Commonwealth has a written response to the defendant's motion for required finding, and I just need to go down to the grand jury and print it out.
And I don't have what Mr. Shapiro filed. Did you file it this morning?
I did.
Okay.
Well, I haven't filed it yet.
Okay.
But it's just a standard Rule 29.
Okay, so I'm definitely going to take a recess, and I certainly would hear arguments from counsel on the motion for a directed verdict.
And
So
I guess
we
all
will
I'm
take
asking
that.
for is, in addition to the recess for the jury, that we take just a brief recess so that I can print out a final version without typographical errors of Commonwealth's written response.
Before we argue?
Before we argue.
Yes, we will do that. Okay. So are we ready to go?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll bring down the jury then. Why don't I get off the bench?
Two parties are present and 14 jurors are present.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get underway again, I want to just make sure you followed my instructions and that you haven't talked about this case with anyone, that you haven't done any independent investigation of the facts or the law, that you haven't heard or listened or read any news reports, and then nothing else has occurred to make sure to interfere with your ability to be fair and impartial. If you have followed my instructions and there's nothing to report, I would just have you raise your hands. Okay, thank you. Before we get underway, it was realized yesterday that there was a discrepancy, slight discrepancy between the recording you heard and the transcript you read. No fault of either party. The recording actually stopped before the transcript did. That portion of the recording the recording's been corrected, and that portion that you didn't hear is going to be replayed at some point in the cross-examination. So that's been clarified. The transcripts, I don't know if Mr. Shapiro, if you want copies distributed at the appropriate point, we'll make those copies available again. So with that, we'll turn things over to Mr. Shapiro.
As an initial matter, Your Honor, I want to introduce two exhibits that I believe are agreed to.
No objection, Your Honor.
One is an excerpt from the Beth Israel Deaconess medical records from the evening of September 17th, 2015.
That's it. Is it 150?
And then the second one is another excerpt from the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center records from September 18th of 2015.
154.
Good morning, Trooper Balducci. Now, Trooper Balducci, you indicated that your initial role in the investigation of the death of Bella Bond, or initially Baby Doe, began earlier than the time of your interview with Mr. McCarthy.
That's correct.
And just remind me when that was.
I didn't respond to the scene. I don't recall exactly when I got involved in the investigation. I believe I said it was a couple of weeks after the initial call, but I'm not certain of that date.
Okay. And were you involved in what has been referred to as the knock and talk with respect to leads?
I did follow some leads, yes.
And were those leads related to the target clothing?
Yes.
And so you had been provided with information from the target company concerning certain clothing that the body was wearing.
That's correct.
And do you recall what kind of an outfit it was?
I believe it was the white pants with some sort of dot on it. That's what my recollection is. Other than the other part of the outfit, I don't recall.
Well, they were polka dot pants, right?
I believe so, yes.
And those polka dot pants were part of the original composite picture that was broadcast on TV and in the media?
I don't recall what exactly was broadcast, but I know that polka dot was like a set of it was, the pants were part of a set that we discovered to be sold at Target.
Okay. And it was like a play outfit, is that right?
I don't know if I would characterize it as a play outfit. I'm comfortable with saying it was a little girl's outfit. I'm sure you could play with it and play in it as well as go to church in it.
Okay. In the course of your following up leads, I take it you didn't find anything. Nobody knew of, or none of the people who had purchased that outfit were in any way suspicious.
Correct.
And then, did you participate in the search at 115 Maxwell Street on September 17th?
No.
So you had never been to that apartment at the time that you interviewed Mr. McCarthy on the September 18th?
No. Inside the apartment, no.
Now, your interview with Mr. McCarthy began at, according to the recording that we heard, at 10:24 in the morning.
If that's what the recording reflects, yes.
On September 18th.
Yes.
And you were there to interrogate a person who, at the time, you believed was a suspect.
That's not true.
Not true?
No.
You were there just interviewing him just as any witness?
It was an interview regarding any involvement he may have had in the missing or death of Bella Bond.
Are you telling us you didn't consider him a suspect when you interviewed him?
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay, so you were there, as I said, to interview a person you believe was a suspect in this investigation.
Yes.
And in fact, the night before, I think you indicated the police, the state police, became aware that Mr. McCarthy was at Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital.
At some point during the course of the night before, leading into the morning of the 18th, I was aware, I was directed to respond to Beth Israel Hospital because that's where he was discovered.
But when you respond, you say you didn't respond until the morning, that is 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock?
I responded at some point during the morning. I'm not totally sure of the exact time.
But when you responded there already were state troopers who had been dispatched there the previous night.
The time they were dispatched, I'm not sure, but yes, there was troopers there monitoring Mr. McCarthy.
So essentially, he was already under custody, in custody.
No, that wasn't the case.
Well, of course, he wasn't going anywhere because he was hospitalized, correct?
He was in a hospital room, yes. He wasn't in handcuffs or anything like that when I responded.
But the troopers were outside his room monitoring him.
The troopers were outside in a common area of the hospital.
Of the interview, say, I know what happened and the other troopers know what happened to Bella. Did you?
Without reviewing the exact words that came out of my mouth or listening to the tape, my best recollection is I think I have a good idea of what happened to Bella. If you'd like to show me the transcript and I'm wrong, then I'd like to take a look at it.
Well, since this is in evidence, I can publish it to the jury.
I think that's right. The transcript, exhibit 151A.
This is exhibit
151A.
151A. Thank you. You see what you say on line 10?
Yes,
I know what happened to Bella.
yes,
These troopers in the room know what happened to Bella.
yes.
So you did tell him that you knew what happened to Bella,
At that point in the interview, that was the phrase that I used, yes.
and you told him he was lying, didn't you?
Again, if I could have the transcript in front of me, if you're going to be pulling out bits and pieces of a 30-minute long interview, I don't want to get. I said several things in several different ways throughout the interview.
All right, looking at the same exhibit 151A, page 29, we're actually starting on page 28 at the bottom. Now's your chance to get out from under whatever you're under and come clean and tell us what happened and let us figure this out, because if you just sit here and blow smoke up my ass, our asses, and lie and lie and lie and lie, you're just digging yourself in a bigger hole. Were those your words?
Yes,
So not only did you tell Mr. McCarthy that you all knew what happened, but you told him that he was lying.
when I made that statement, I was referring to what I conceived as lies that were previously stated in the interview. In the initial stages of the interview, I asked him several questions. Some of those questions I had the answers for. Some of them I had some idea of the answers, and I interpreted his responses as being untruthful. So when I did make a statement of lies, 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 that statement was referring to previous responses he had made to my questions.
And again on page 29, line 23, and you say, and even things that you said about the apartment, those aren't true. We've already been to the apartment. Well, number one, you hadn't been to the apartment, had you?
I said we. I didn't say I. And as you know, as part of an investigation, the knowledge of other investigators can be relayed to me.
Okay, and what did he tell you about the apartment that was a lie?
Regarding the apartment, the referral I made to the apartment was the living arrangements of him and Miss Bond. Questions that I had asked him earlier in my interview referred to his relationship with Miss Bond. And his responses to me, in my opinion, were not truthful. So in this statement, I'm referring to previous questions that he had answered regarding his relationship with Rochelle Bond and their arrangement in the apartment that I determined to be not.
Okay, and what exactly are you talking about? He said he slept on the couch. Did you think that was a lie?
What I'm talking about.
Did you think that was a lie?
Would you like me to answer that question or the first part of the question?
You can answer. What I asked you was, did you think that his statement that he slept on the couch was a lie?
Could I answer the first part first?
No, I think just try to answer that
Okay.
question now.
I didn't know if the part about sleeping on the couch was a lie.
Okay. Did you think that his description of the arrangement of the apartment was a lie?
Again, I wasn't referring to the description of the apartment.
My question was, did you think that his description of the arrangement of the apartment was a lie?
No, I had no reason to believe that.
Did you think that when he said that she wasn't his girlfriend was a lie?
Can you repeat that?
Did you think that when Mr. McCarthy said that Rochelle wasn't his girlfriend, did you think that was a lie?
I had some concern about that response because Mr. McCarthy originally told me Kathleen was his girlfriend. Then he told me that Rochelle and he were just friends. And then further in the interview, he refers to them fighting like any other couple. So those things obviously drew some concern to my interpreting of his interview.
So did you think that it was a lie when he said Rochelle wasn't his girlfriend?
Again,
Yes or no?
well, I wouldn't classify it as a lie. I would classify it as a concern of mine to try to validate it at a later time.
All right, so tell me, what was it about the early parts of the interview that you were referring to when you said, you just sit here and blow smoke up my ass, our asses, and lie and lie and lie and lie. You're just digging yourself in a bigger hole. Now, what lies are you referring to there?
Again, you asked me if I thought.
No. I asked you, what lies were you referring to when you told Mr. McCarthy that he lied and lied and lied and lied and was digging himself in a bigger hole? What lies were you referring to?
If you're asking me to define the word lie there as opposed to the word lie or validate a lie that I'm saying now, it's semantics.
Yeah, you're beginning to sound like Bill Clinton. What were the lies that you were referring to?
The lies the lies are discrepancies in Mr. McCarthy's statement were, one, his involvement in the Maxwell Street address. In my initial interview with Mr. McCarthy, he did everything possible to distance himself from Maxwell Street. I asked him, where do you stay? He didn't come off the bat and say Maxwell Street. He listed some friends he did not name. He listed an address in Quincy. I asked him about his girlfriend. He does not mention Rochelle Bond as a girlfriend. In fact, he mentions Kathleen as his girlfriend. So those are, whether you call them lies, discrepancies, whatever I called them in the interview, those were some of the things that were concerning to me. On top of that, he talks about the child being in DCF custody. Now, we talk DCF for several minutes in the interview, and he goes on to tell me about the interaction or lack of interaction with DCF, and they just one day show up and scoop her away, and she's gone. That's concerning to me because previously Mr. McCarthy makes it clear that he's there on a daily basis. He's at the house on a daily basis. I don't know the exact procedure of DCF custody or DCF taking away a child, but I know they just don't show up in a van, scoop a little girl away, and she's gone. No questions asked, no home visits, nothing like that. That was concerning to me.
Did you know for a fact that that didn't happen?
Mr. Shapiro asked him to list the things that he considered to be lies.
I
He was answering the question. Mr. Shapiro interrupted him. So I'd ask to be allowed, if there are further things that he wanted to convey to the jury, that he convey it. They are responsive, directly responsive to the question.
Okay, anything else?
My train of thought got sidetracked. I apologize. But regarding the DCF, that raised a big concern to me. Not only because anyone with common sense would know that just doesn't happen. Two, there was no emotion or concern once if the baby is gone. There was really, other than it was like there wasn't a second thought about it. And I also had reason to believe that Mr. McCarthy knew why we were there and had reason to believe that the baby wasn't in DCF custody. So all those things, in the initial stages of my interview, when I'm talking to Mr. McCarthy, are going through my head. I didn't pass judgment or make a decision whether or not he murdered Bella Bond. What I did do was use the interview as a tool to gauge what I knew and what other investigators might know to form enough probable cause to make an arrest for the death of Bella Bond.
So, getting back to where we started here, Trooper Balducci, you've been trained in interrogation techniques, haven't you?
When I initially...
Yes or no?
Yes.
And where did you receive this training?
Years ago, I went to the Reed technique of interview interrogation school, as well as I took it was almost like an in-service state police training. And then more or less, it's from 13 years of experience working in homicide and talking to other investigators that were more experienced than myself.
Do you have regular in-service training with respect to interrogation techniques?
We do not.
But particularly the Reed interrogation technique is something that you learned initially.
It was a course that I had taken, but it really doesn't. I don't usually apply the techniques. I couldn't even tell you what the Reed technique is.
But it's fair to say, is it not, that your goal in interrogating a suspect is, as I asked you before, to get a confession?
Well, first of all, it's not like the movies where if the goal is to get the person talking, to build a rapport with the person and get the person to talk about anything. People talk about truthful things. They try to avoid deceitful things. So if you get the person talking and I establish a baseline. Everyone's nervous when they talk to the police. So what I do is I start talking to the individual, and I talk.
At this point, Your Honor, this is not responsive.
Okay. Well, I think you've answered the question enough, so I'll allow Mr. Shapiro to put another question.
One of the techniques, is it not, in interrogating a suspect, is to get him when he is most vulnerable.
No, that's not a technique I use.
Isn't it true that when you went to the hospital, you knew that Mr. McCarthy was there with a serious condition?
I was informed that he had an infection in the arm or something like that.
And you knew that he was about to have surgery?
As part of my interview, he told me that. Going into the interview, I did not know that.
All right. So is it your testimony that before you went to interview somebody who is in a hospital, you didn't bother to find out how sick he was, how capable he was of answering questions by talking to a nurse or a doctor? Yes or no?
No, I did not do that.
You did not. So, looking at Exhibit 154, you didn't find out that that at 10:10 in the morning, just minutes before you interviewed him or interrogated him, he was suffering from uncontrolled pain. If you look at the portion of the document here.
That's what that document reflects.
Uncontrolled pain, correct?
Yes.
So you didn't bother to find that out, did you? Did you?
I had no reason to.
Well, didn't you want to find out whether Mr. McCarthy was in a condition to be able to respond intelligently and voluntarily to your questions?
That's why I talked to him and evaluated for myself that he was very lucid and answered my questions and actually questioned my questions.
But you didn't bother to find out what his condition was medically, did you?
I didn't feel it was important for me to find out his reported condition. I made that judgment for myself.
And you didn't find out what kind of medication he was under.
No, I didn't.
You didn't know whether it was a medication that might have affected his ability to be clear, coherent, and respond intelligently.
Again, no. I made that determination.
But it's fair to say that you caught him at a vulnerable time.
I didn't characterize that as a vulnerable time.
At some point in the course of the interview, you accused him of being nervous.
Yes.
And you accused him of being nervous, suggesting that it was because he was trying to hide something, didn't you?
That was my interpretation of how the interview was going, yes.
But didn't you just tell us that all people who are being interviewed by police officers tend to be nervous?
Yes, but I couldn't finish my statement because I got cut off. If I could finish it, I would tell you.
No, you can just answer the question. Did you tell us before that all people who are questioned by police officers tend to be nervous?
I said initially, when talked to police officers, all people have a nervousness about them, usually.
And when you accuse Mr. McCarthy of being nervous and suggesting that he had something to hide, he said, "What do you expect? I'm about to have major surgery," didn't he?
Yes.
And he said, "What do you expect? You got me at a time which is I'm at my worst," didn't he?
He did say that.
One of the other techniques that you've learned is intimidation of a suspect, to intimidate him into confessing.
I do not try to intimidate people into confessing. That in my opinion, does not work.
And
some
so,
people might use that method, but not I.
The fact that you had three, including yourself, three state troopers in the room interrogating Mr. McCarthy in his small hospital room prior to surgery, you didn't think of that as intimidating?
I made every effort. There was three troopers in the room. One trooper, you could hear him on the audio, was Trooper DeFosis. He was actually positioned at the door, probably 15 feet, probably more, but I'll say 15 feet away from us, to control any medical staff coming in because we were audio recording. So although he does speak up at part of the interview, that was not an orchestrated interjection. He was mainly there to control the flow of traffic in and out of that room.
There was no problem hearing Trooper DeFos's in the interview, was there?
At that point when he interjected, I don't know if he walked, I don't recall if he walked towards us or what. Obviously he was listening to the interview. That was not by any means his role. Trooper O'Connor and I were the primary two people, which is normal protocol for an interview. And when you listen to it, you realize I do most of the talking. Trooper O'Connor's role is to listen. He knows the investigation as well, and he could chime in or if there's anything I may or may not have missed. So and again, we weren't over Mr. McCarthy. We were at the base of his bed, probably a couple of feet away from him. It wasn't the intimidation as you might want to paint.
Now, Trooper Balducci, I asked you a moment ago about Mr. McCarthy's medical condition, about which you weren't concerned, correct?
I wasn't concerned as that of his condition affecting the way he would respond to my questions.
Now, when you interviewed him, you say you started out, trying to build a rapport.
I started out talking to Mr. McCarthy to get his story,
That wasn't the question. Did you or did you not say a moment ago that one of your techniques when you start an interview is to build a rapport with the suspect?
Yes.
Okay. So that he'll talk freely and openly.
Yes.
And you want to get the person talking so that, as you told us, you can get the truth.
Not so much the truth, but a story. If the truth, do you
want the truth or not?
Yes, I guess
Okay.
I misspoke, yes.
So you want him to start talking, build a rapport, so he tells you the truth. Yes or no?
So he can tell me something. If he tells me the truth, that's one thing. If he tells me lies, that's also important to my investigation.
Do you want the truth or do you want lies?
I will take whatever he's giving me in an interview.
So
People that are innocent do not lie. They tell the truth.
You don't care in an interview whether you get the truth or not?
The truth is nice, but lies are just as good.
You like lies because that will help you with a prosecution, right?
No, either truth or lies will both help my investigation.
Why would lies help your investigation?
Well-
If you're trying to find out what happened, why isn't the truth what you want to get?
I want both. I will take both.
I know you've told us that, but why would you want to lie? Why would you want to lie
Again-
if you're trying to find out the truth?
As an investigator, in my experience, people that have not committed crimes or people that aren't trying to hide something, they have no reason to lie. They tell the truth always. If someone's telling me a lie, there's a reason behind that false statement. So if the truth is helpful, a lie could be investigated further or be confirmed or denied.
So what you're saying is a lie would help you to prosecute the person.
No, what I said is a lie could be just as helpful in an investigation as the truth.
So which is it? When you were talking to Mr. McCarthy, were you trying to get the truth or were you trying to get a lie?
Again, Mr. Shapiro, I answered this question several times. I wanted to get a story. That was my role there. I wanted to get Mr. McCarthy's story.
Now, when you first started the interview, Mr. McCarthy said, I don't know why you're here. why are you here? Remember?
Yes, and I had no reason to believe that.
You had no reason to believe what?
That he had no reason, that he didn't know why I was there.
But you didn't tell him, did you?
He didn't ask again.
Well, he asked at the beginning, correct?
Yes.
He said, what do you want? Why are you here? Right?
Yes.
And you sort of put him off by saying, well, we have to do some paperwork first. Or maybe it was one of the other troopers who said, we have to do some paperwork first. Right?
Yes, Trooper O'Connor did interject and ask for the paperwork, and then he finished the paperwork, and we've continued our interview.
But isn't it true that Trooper O'Connor said we have paperwork to get out of the way before or after you had done the Miranda warnings?
I'm not sure. I thought we got like half, I'm not sure.
You recall on page 3, at the very beginning, you say you understand your rights, and then you say, having these rights in mind, do you wish to talk to me now? And Mr. McCarthy says, yeah, I don't. Well, I mean, I don't even know what it's about. So now, this was after you had already given him the rights, correct?
Well,
Yes.
the rights were not completed. So we were in the process of giving Mr. McCarthy the rights, and he had questions. And I wanted to make sure that Mr. McCarthy fully understood his rights, signed the document, and we could proceed with the interview. I'm not going to move any further until he signs a document saying he's willing to talk to us.
And then, when he said on page 4, he understands the whole rights thing, I'm just saying, and then Trooper Collins interjects, well, we'll explain everything to you after we go through the paperwork. We'll explain what this is about, but we have to go through this paperwork first. And Mr. McCarthy says, oh, I see what you're saying. So after that, he signed the form, correct?
Yes?
Did anybody explain anything about why you were there?
He didn't seem too concerned about it anymore.
My
No, we didn't.
My question was, did you explain?
No.
Trooper Collins said you would.
Trooper O'Connor.
Trooper O'Connor said,
That's probably,
is that a mistake? It says Trooper Collins.
it should, Trooper O'Connor, there was no Trooper Collins.
Okay. So Trooper O'Connor said you would, but after he signed the form, you didn't.
Correct.
But you got Mr. McCarthy talking, correct?
Yes?
You built a rapport,
I would hope, yes.
and at some point, you were asking him to describe the apartment, correct?
Yes.
And he says, well, you come in the entryway, and then there's the living room on the left, and then there's a front bedroom, correct?
Yes.
And then he says there's a kitchen area and a bathroom, and then the back bedroom where Rochelle's daughter's room, right?
Yes.
Now, you hadn't asked him anything about Bella or the daughter or anything at that point, had you?
I asked him who lived in the apartment, and he neglected to say Bella.
Well, because at the time, Bella wasn't living in the apartment, was she?
No.
But when you asked him to describe the apartment, he described Rochelle's daughter's room.
Yes.
And that was before you said anything about Bella.
Correct.
Okay. So he basically volunteered that there was, that there had been a daughter who lived there, and then without any further questioning, he went on to say that DSS had taken the child some time ago, correct?
He did say that, yes.
And again, that was without any specific questioning from you or any prompting or any threats.
Yes.
Now, you then proceeded to ask him a number of questions, taking the child, right?
Yes, I did.
And he explained that. And he explained that he had come home one day and the child was gone, and he had asked Rochelle what had happened, correct?
Yes.
And Rochelle had told him that DSS had taken the child, and he also indicated to you that he knew that her older children had been taken by DSS.
He
Correct?
did say that, yes.
And you continued at various points to ask him to explain, what had happened or why it had happened. And you asked him to explain what the procedure for DSS taking a child was, correct?
Yes, I did.
And he says, yeah, I don't have children. I have no idea, correct?
That was one of the statements he made.
And you then followed up at another time and asked him, well, what did Rochelle say had happened? And he said, well, Rochelle told me that the guy from DSS had come and said, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Either I take the child or we get the police involved, correct?
He did make that statement, yes.
And he also, in response to a question at some other point, said that Rochelle had told him that somebody had complained about her spanking the child,
Yes.
and that she thought that that's what had happened, or that's why DSS was involved, correct?
Yes.
And so he even told you that he was surprised to hear from Rochelle about that somebody had complained about spanking the child, because he had never seen her hit or mistreat Bella.
Correct.
And he also told you at another point that he thought that Rochelle was a good mother.
Correct.
So clearly this was not a person who at any time was trying to put the blame on Rochelle, was it?
He never blamed Rochelle, no.
No. He said she was a good mother. She took care of her child well, and he was even surprised to hear that DSS had become involved, because he had never seen any reason for that. Correct?
Yes.
And then you asked him some more questions as to why DSS would be involved. That is, whether there was any problem in the apartment. And Mr. McCarthy said no. She had her own room. She had plenty of toys. They were all over the place. And so he didn't see any reason why DSS would be involved.
Correct.
And then he even, you asked him again, following up on the DSS story, well, I guess I've lost my train of thought. Okay. Oh yeah, and you asked him, well, did you ever talk to Rochelle about what had happened to Bella? Didn't you?
Yes.
And he said, yeah, well, Rochelle told him that this is what happens, that DSS takes kids for nothing, and that there's, that's what happened in the past with her 2 prior kids, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I don't recall exactly. That was conveyed between the 2 of them, yes. I don't know who said what.
Okay. Well, then on page 24, you ask on line 14, did Rochelle does she ever try to go see Bella anymore or no? And he says, no, which I want to say I thought it was strange. But it was just kind of like, whenever I bring it up, she wouldn't want to talk about it. She would just not want to talk about it at all. Correct? Right. And then you go on, what you ask, what do you mean bring it up how? And then Mr. McCarthy says, if I would say like, are you working on getting Bella back at all? You say, yeah. And she would just kind of be like, listen, I've been through this before plenty of times. Once they take your kid, you don't get them back. And you say, really? And the answer is, you don't get them back. You say, really? And then Mr. McCarthy says, and I hate arguing, especially with females, so I would just kind of let it go. So that was his, what he explained to you about what Rochelle had told him about what had happened to Bella, correct?
Correct.
And he told you that's what she told him and that's what he believed, correct?
What she was told.
Now, at some point in the interview, you decided, no more Mr. Nice Guy. I've talked to Mr. McCarthy for 25 minutes. I'm not getting anywhere. He hasn't confessed. So now, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Now I'm going to start being heavy-handed about it. Correct?
Not 100%. At one point in the interview, in my opinion, I exhausted all the questions that he answered, and at some point, I had to get to the point of the interview. And I did.
And it's fair to say that the part of the interview where you stop being Mr. Nice Guy is on page 26, line 12, where you say, well, that's why I'm here trying to, we as investigators, we just don't listen to one side of the story. We like to listen to, we talk to both people involved. Correct?
Yes, and that's still Mr. Nice Guy. That's not being...
Well, you say, so obviously you and Rochelle are involved in this situation and we're trying to get the truth out. So I'm here talking to you, just trying to find out what happened to the baby, and you're telling me some things that just don't line up. But I want to hear what happened. I think I know what happened to the baby, but I want to hear it from you, and this is the one chance for you to tell the truth about what happened. A lot of things could have happened, but I'd like to hear it from you. So at this point, you're telling him that you don't believe his story. You don't believe what he's telling you.
Well, at this point where I bring it up to the next level, I already told you, I didn't believe several things that he didn't tell me. So I acted on my interpretation of the first part of the interview to bring the second part, or the back third of the interview, up to the next, to push it, be a little more firm, not aggressive. My tone doesn't change, my mannerisms don't change, but I am firm with Mr. McCarthy. And I'm firm with him to try to get some truths out of him.
And you tell him, this is the one chance for you to tell the truth about what happened. correct?
That's the phrase I used, yes.
Which is a threat. If you don't tell us the truth now, you won't have another chance, right?
Looking back, I probably should have used good chance rather than one chance, but I said that, and
it's fair to say
he would have had, that wouldn't have been the only chance he had to make statements, but
he doesn't know that, does he?
correct,
That's what you told him.
yes.
That was a threat. You better tell us the truth or else.
It was a bad choice of words.
And Mr. McCarthy says, in response to that, I'm telling you everything I know and have been told since, her since. And you say, really? And he says, absolutely. And so you say you had no interaction with the child, or something didn't happen to the child that could have caused harm to the child? And he says, I had interaction with the child, yeah, but nothing that would have caused harm to her. And you say, no? And he says, like playing with her, talking with her. You say, yeah? And he says, being around the house when she was around there, going out with the daughter, taking her to the park, things like that. Correct?
Again, those were his responses.
And again, you're still not getting, you're still not getting anywhere in terms of what you want. That is, you haven't gotten a confession yet, have you?
I'm getting usable information, though.
And then on page 28, then you amp it up to another level, right? Right? That's when on line 6 you say, all right, listen, Mike, people go through a lot in life, okay? I'm going to be straight with you right now, okay? And I can just tell, talking to you, you look extremely nervous. It's like the weight of the world's on your shoulders now. I know what happened to Bella. These troopers in the room know what happened to Bella. We've been conducting an investigation for months now. Okay, we talk to a lot of people. We're still talking to people. That's amping it up even more, isn't it?
Again, my tone of voice, we could play the tape. I don't believe it changes. But the only thing that changes at this point is his nervousness during the interview. His nervousness gets amped up, so my questions rise to the next level.
And maybe his nervousness gets amped up because you're accusing him of doing something that he's told you he didn't do. Correct?
That's not how I interpreted it.
Do you think somebody might get nervous if there are 3 state troopers in his hospital room and they're telling him they don't believe him and they think he did something?
Again, that's why I asked several questions to get a baseline of his nervousness, so when the tougher questions come around, you can gauge the difference in responses.
So would you say that his nervousness increased when you started asking him or started indicating that somebody was telling you that he had hit Bella?
When I started...
Yes or no? The question is, do you think that you accusing him of harming the child might increase his nervousness? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And then you go on to say, we want to know why it happened, and you know if the oh shit button went off, that it happens, but to sit here and lie to me about it and not come, get it off your chest and do the right thing for the little girl. Rochelle's already talking. We already have the whole story. Now you're accusing him, aren't you?
Absolutely not.
And you're not accusing him when you tell him to come clean and tell us what happened and let us figure this out. Because if you just sit here and blow smoke up my ass, our asses, and lie and lie and lie and lie, you're digging yourself in a deeper hole. That's not an accusation?
No.
What hole is he digging himself deeper in?
At that point, I'm thinking to myself, he's not telling me his story. we're trying to figure out what his story is, but the point I'm getting across, by lying and lying over small things, big things, whatever he's lying about, that's how you dig yourself into a hole.
What hole is he digging himself deeper in?
Lying in a police investigation.
So this is an accusation, and you tell him, if you don't come clean, if you don't confess, you're going to be in bigger trouble. Another threat, correct?
Again, I'm getting it across to him that it's not okay to lie in a police investigation.
And the big lie here is that you didn't like his explanation of what happened to Bella, correct?
Well, there were several inconsistencies throughout his statement. I didn't like any of them.
My question was the big lie his explanation as to what happened to Bella?
Again, there were several lies. I can't classify what the big one was at that point.
Did you know at this time what had happened to Rochelle's older children?
No.
So you had no idea that Rochelle's children had been taken by DSS?
I had no idea.
And when he told you that that was the case, and that was one of the reasons he believed what Rochelle told him, you had no idea how to evaluate that statement, did you?
No.
And had you known about what had happened with Rochelle's older children, maybe you would have thought a little differently about his answer.
I can't answer that, how I would judge a person's answer in hindsight.
Now, after all of these, all of the interrogation, going from Mr. Nice Guy to amping it up, to accusing him of lying, of blowing smoke up your ass, of not telling the truth, of digging himself in a deeper hole, his answer was still the same. I didn't do anything. I don't know anything that happened to Bella, correct?
That's correct.
And nobody at this point had even told him what had happened to Bella, had they?
No, and he didn't ask.
And so, on page 32, on line 12, this is almost at the end of the investigation. You say, I mean, if something went wrong, or something while you were watching the baby, or she was watching the baby, or if something went sideways and things happened, and it was an accident, or what happened, or it was just a spanking or something, and Mr. McCarthy says, what was an accident? And you say, I'm trying, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Mike. I'm just trying to figure out, I can't comprehend how a child like that could get hurt, killed, right? And this is the first time anybody had said anything about Bella being killed, right?
Yes.
And Mr. McCarthy's response is, killed? With a big question mark?
Well, there's a question mark on the paper, but his response was it was like the wall is brown. There was no, oh my, killed? For someone who took care of a child and lived with a child for several months, took a child over to their house for Easter, it wasn't killed. Where is she? What happened? Oh my gosh, it was killed?
Because he didn't believe she was dead, did he? Because didn't you then say, question, you don't know she's dead? And his answer, no. And you were pretty surprised, weren't you? You then went on to say, you don't know Bella's dead? And he says, no. Isn't that right?
I wasn't surprised. I was shocked at his lack of response.
And you were even at a loss for words, because all you could say is, you don't know she's dead? And he says, no. and you ask him again, you don't know Bella's dead? And he says no. And then again, you say, really? And he says no. And then you say again, huh? She's not? And he says, not to my knowledge. And you ask him again, are you sure? And he says, positive. And then you say, you didn't drive over to East Boston? No. Trooper Collins interjects, Southie? You say Southie? He says no. Boston Harbor? No. Question, no. Answer, no. And then, despite all the interrogation, despite your Mr. Nice Guy, amping up the volume, when it gets to the money question, he says, I don't know that she's dead. And you're basically at a loss for words. Correct?
That's not true.
Okay. In any case, you go on to say, Mike, we've been handling this investigation for months. It's been all over the news. We're here right now talking to you. This is not some sort of, we're homicide detectives, okay? We've been doing this for a long time. And he says, okay. And you go on and say, okay, this is the real deal. This is your chance to get out from under this. We know what went wrong. We know what happened to Bella. Would you say that's an accusation? That he was involved in her death?
That's a statement of that I knew what happened to Bella. There's no accusation of...
You weren't suggesting in that statement that you knew that he was involved?
That statement was made...
Yes or no?
No.
Okay. And then, when you say, we know what happened to Bella, Mr. McCarthy says, I don't think you do know what happened to Bella because you're sitting here basically saying, I did something, so you don't know what happened to her. Now, you say it wasn't an accusation, but Mr. McCarthy certainly thought you were accusing him of doing something to Bella, didn't he?
I don't know what he...
Well, you can read that answer. He says, you're sitting here basically saying, I did something. Right? So he certainly responded as if you were accusing him of doing something.
He did.
Okay. And then you say, then you tell me what happened to her. You ask him.
Yes.
And he says, I have no idea. I was told by a girl. I told, and he's now referring to what Rochelle told him, correct?
I don't know who
Well-
that girl is.
In the context, don't you know that?
No.
Okay. I was told by a girl, and then he says, you know what? This is getting too far now. I know at this point, I'm obviously going to need a lawyer, so I'm done talking.
Correct.
Fair to say, a reasonable conclusion by somebody who had just been told by 3 state police officers that he was lying and that he was involved in the death or murder of a young child?
Was that a question?
Yeah.
Can you... I'm sorry.
Reasonable response for somebody who's just accused of murder to say, well, gee, I told you I didn't do it, but you're not believing me, so it's time to get a lawyer.
A reasonable response is
Yes or no?
No.
Okay, not reasonable. At this point, Your Honor, I'd like to play the last portion of the interrogation.
So the corrected tape has been substituted for the exhibit, and we're going to play some portion of it, the last portion.
Can we pass out
The transcripts? Yes. Mr. Champa has a copy of the transcripts. You want to give those to the court officer? Okay. Okay.
I think you have that updated. I thought I did. Yeah, here, I can check.
Mr. Champ, why don't you show it to Mr. Deacon, just to make sure? It's been in my eye.
Yeah, that's right.
I better look at it too. Is this the one?
Yeah, it's got the.
Just make sure both counsel get copies and the jury, so we're all looking at the same document. I hope we have enough copies.
You should. Do you have extras here? I do not have extras. I think that's all we have. That's the whole pile.
This is essentially the same thing we handed out yesterday. The transcript hasn't changed.
Just that one.
Just so the jury knows, we're starting the recording on page 28, line 6.
I'm sorry, did counsel have copies of what the jury discussed?
I don't, but I don't need I can use the.
Well, we have an extra copy.
I'm fine. You're right. Thank you, but all set.
Sorry, which page are we on again?
Page 28, line 6.
On your shoulders right now. I know what happened to Bella. Those in the room know what happened to Bella. We've been conducting an investigation for months now. We've talked to a lot of people. We're still talking to people. You know what I'm talking about. And now's your chance to get out of it and tell the truth. Okay? We want to know why it happened. And, you know, oh shit button went off. That it happens, but to sit here and lie to me about it and not come, you know, get it off your chest, do the right thing for a little girl. Rochelle's already talking. We already have the whole story. I'm not making that up. I can't come in here as a state police officer and lie to you and tell you what's not and what is and what's not happening. She's telling the story. Now's your chance to get out from under whatever you're under and come clean and tell us what happened and let us figure this out. Because if you just sit here and blow smoke up my ass and our asses and lie and lie and lie and lie, you're just digging yourself in a bigger hole.
I'm not blowing smoke up anyone's ass. I'm just saying, you know, I might look nervous, man, because I'm about to go into a major surgery in an hour.
No, I'm just, like I said, I'm talking to you.
You couldn't have caught me at a worse time.
It's okay.
Like,
You're doing great. I'm telling you right now, you're doing great. You know, the whole interview was going great until I sort of confront you with some things that I don't believe aren't truth. You know? So, again, something happened to a little girl, okay? And even things that you said about the apartment, those aren't true. You've already been to the apartment. Listen, I'm trying to tell you little bits of information that I know to show you that I'm not in here jerking you around. I'm here to get your side of the story of what happened to Bella. And now's your chance to tell us.
and I told you everything I know the best of my recollection. If that apartment is different, maybe you guys were wrong apartment. Because what I said again is you go through the front door, the living room's to the left, then the front bedroom's behind that, then you walk and the kitchen's out there,
Yeah,
and then
no,
the bathroom's
worry
after
about
that, and the
Mike,
bedroom's...
Mike, I'm worried about where Bella is.
Yeah, now I am too,
Yeah.
because I'm told she's been in DSS.
Mike, do you understand what you're saying though, when it says Rochelle's talking, he's giving more information than you are? Do you understand what that means?
Yeah, I've seen enough TV to have an idea what that
Mike,
means.
this is a TV.
I know it's on TV, but I'm just saying to understand what that means,
you
but I
understand what he
can't.
means when she says that she's talking, and she's giving a totally different story than what you're giving. And we're giving you a chance to give your side of your version of the story.
I'm I'm giving my truthful side of the story.
Why would Rochelle, answer me this, and I'm asking you this is a question, why would Rochelle tell us that you hurt her baby?
Maybe to cover her own ass if she was. There's nothing else I can think of. Why would Rochelle let me hurt her baby?
I'm asking you. We're asking you that question.
Three words.
It doesn't make any sense to us why she would just pull your name out of a hat and say, Michael McCarthy hurt my baby.
Maybe that was the only one around.
Yeah.
No one else was really around. She doesn't have too many friends.
I mean, if something went wrong or something while you were watching the baby or she was watching the baby or if something went sideways and things happened and it was an accident or what happened or it was just a spanking or something.
What was
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Mike. I'm just trying to figure out. I can't comprehend how a child like that could get hurt, killed, right?
Killed?
You don't know she's dead?
No.
You don't know Bella's dead?
No.
Really?
No.
Huh? She's not?
Not to my knowledge.
Are you sure?
Positive.
You didn't drive over to East Boston?
No.
Southie?
No.
Boston Harbor?
No.
No?
No.
Mike, we've been handling this investigation for months. Been all over the news. We're here right now talking to you. This is not some sort of, we're homicide detectives. Okay, we've been doing this for a long time.
Okay.
Okay? This is the real deal. This is your chance to get out from under this. Okay? We know what went wrong. We know what happened to Bella.
I don't think you do know what happened to Felix. He's sitting there basically saying I did something, so you don't know what happened to her.
Then you tell me what happened to her.
I have no idea. I was told by a girl. I told her, you know what? This is getting too far now. I know at this point I'm obviously gonna need a lawyer when I'm talking.
Okay. It is.
I have no further questions.
Trooper Balducci, defense counsel showed you some hospital records. Do you recall seeing those?
Yes.
And he showed you what's now Exhibit 154. Bethesda Deaconess Hospital records.
Yes.
And he asked you there about some records from September 18th of 2015, marked at 10:10 a.m. Do you see that?
Yes.
And he asked you about records. It looks like it was prepared by, it wasn't Dr. Sherman, but it was doctor whose name we can't read, who says, I agree with the documentation by Dr. Sherman. Is that right?
I can't see that on.
At the top, it says, I've seen and examined the patient on 9/8/15.
Oh, yes,
I
yes,
agree with
yes.
the documentation by Dr. Sherman.
Yes.
Defense counsel asked you about pain. First of all, it says here, it reports some kind of pain. I can't see if it's central or control this AM, right? You see that?
I can't read it, but
Neither can I. It says down on the line there, it says defense counsel asked you about a line that says pain.
yes.
There are two choices there. You see two choices?
Yes.
Controlled or uncontrolled?
Yes.
And then there's a scale of 0 to 10.
Yes.
Based on your own life experience, are you familiar with what that scale indicates from your own medical treatment?
Well, I would just assume you from 0 to 10, being 10 the most pain, and you'd make some sort of indication on that little line there.
Is that something doctors have done in your life to you?
I haven't seen it like this, but they would ask on a scale of 1 to 10.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
They ask you about a 1 to 10 on a
Yes,
pain scale.
yes.
Is there anything noted on that pain scale?
No.
So where it says controlled or uncontrolled, does that indicate to you that he was in uncontrolled agony?
It doesn't indicate anything.
Did he appear to you when you talked to him? And I understand you can't get in his head and say how much something hurts or whatever. Was there any outward indication when you spoke to him that he was in pain?
None.
And then, if you look down, there's an indication of sort of vitals, which I won't begin to ask you about because I certainly don't have the expertise, but there's a general. Under exam, there's a general. And you see there's two choices, NAD or uncomfortable. You see that?
Yes.
And what is the uncomfortable checked?
No.
I don't know what NAD stands for, but there's an option for uncomfortable and it's not checked. Is that fair?
Yes.
There's also a psychiatric down near the bottom. You see that?
Yes.
And it has choices, apparently, boxes that can be checked. One says alert, not checked. Is that right? Then it says calm.
Yes.
And that is checked. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then it says mood affect. And what is it? Can you read what that says next to it?
I think it says frustrated.
So it indicated that he was calm but frustrated. Is that right?
Yeah. According to this.
And in the neurological sign, it says fluent speech.
Yes.
Trooper.
He's got a promotion.
Yeah. We're all having trouble with train of thought this morning. Trooper, understanding that you're not a doctor, but does anything on this medical record that you've been shown change your view? Well, let me ask you this. What was your view of Mr. McCarthy, the defendant's mental state when you interviewed him?
His state was fine.
Did you see any signs in your mind of concern that he wasn't able to understand your questions?
None at all.
Did you see any sign that he was responding to sort of in strange or illogical ways? In other words, you ask one question, he answers a totally different question.
None whatsoever.
Is there anything about these records that cause you to change your feelings on that score?
No.
What did you mean when you were interviewing the defendant when you said, I think repeatedly, we know what happened to Bella? What did you mean?
That she was murdered, dead.
Were you conveying to him did you intend to convey to him, we know that you did it?
No.
If he had suggested that someone else had murdered Bella, in other words, if he had told you that either Rochelle Bond or someone else had done it, would you have wanted him to continue telling you that story?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because it was justification of what happened to her. That's what I was trying to find out. What happened to the baby?
You indicated when Mr. Shapiro was asking you questions that you had a reason for thinking that he already knew before your interview that Bella was not in DCF custody.
Can you repeat that?
I think please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought in response to one of Mr. Shapiro's questions, you indicated that you had reason to believe that the defendant knew before the interview started that Bella was not in DCF custody.
Yes.
And what was your basis of knowledge for that?
I received information that the day before, one of Mr. McCarthy's friends had texted him and brought this whole situation concerning the Bella up about her death.
Did you have information that his friend had accused him of killing Bella? Did you know that?
Yes.
So going into the interview, you had reason to believe that he already knew that there was some issue as to whether Bella was in DCF custody.
That's correct.
Did he mention that to you at all?
Not at all.
I want to ask you, Mr. Shapiro just played a section of the interview for you. Do you recall that, starting from page 28 of the transcript? So I'm going to show you page 26 of the transcript, 2 transcript pages before where we just picked up. Okay. And can you read from line 4 your question? It's sort of picking up in the middle of a question, but I left out no okay. Line 4, what you asked him?
Well, again, that's why we're here trying to talk to you. We're trying to just find out really, what happened between you and her and what happened to Bella. Because Bella's not in DCF custody, and Rochelle is telling us something different about what happened to her, and that something different involves you.
When you told him, and his answer was, like what?
Yes.
So when you told him Bella is not in DCF custody, did he ask you any questions about that?
None.
Did he say, well, first of all, did you have information that Bella was not in DCF custody?
I knew she wasn't in DCF custody.
And did he ask you, what do you mean she's not in DCF custody?
No.
Did he ask you, well, then where is she?
No.
Did he ask you, have you found her?
No.
Did he ask you, is she okay?
No.
His answer was, like what? Is that right?
Correct.
And then what did you ask him? Then there's a long section here, but go ahead and read that with the court's leave. Go ahead and read that.
Starting at line 12?
Yes.
Well, that's why I'm here, trying to, we as investigators, we just don't listen to one side of the story. We talk to both people involved. So obviously you and Rochelle are involved in this situation, and we're trying to get the truth out. So I'm here talking to you, just trying to find out what happened to the baby, and you're telling me some things that just don't line up. But I want to hear what happened. I think I know what happened to the baby, but I want to hear it from you. And this is the one chance for you to tell the truth about what happened. A lot of things could have happened, but I'd like to hear it from you.
And then he answered, I'm telling you everything that I know and have been told, and since, it's a little confusing since or since. And then what did you say?
So you had no interaction with the child?
No, before that you said really, I think.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, really.
And then he said absolutely?
Yes.
And what did you say?
So you had no interaction with the child, or something didn't happen to the child that could have caused harm to the child?
And he said, I had interaction with the child, yeah, but, and what did he say?
And then I said, like what?
He said, nothing that would cause harm to her.
Correct.
And you said?
No.
He said, like playing with her, talking with her, and you said?
Yeah.
And he said, being around the house when she was around there, going out with the daughter, taking her to the park, things like that?
Correct.
And then what did you say?
Why would Rochelle tell us that you hit the child, hit Bella?
I couldn't tell you, he said. What did you say?
No? Question mark?
He said, no, and I don't think Rochelle would let someone stay around that was. You interrupted him.
Did you...
Hitting her child. And what did you say?
Did she ever hit the child?
And he said, not that I saw it. No. That's why I was kind of surprised when she even said someone spanked her. Someone said spanked her. Someone said they saw her spank her on the bum. I was even kind of surprised at that. And this is the point where Mr. Shapiro just played you the tape. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
So understanding that we may have been reading a little faster or a little slower than the actual interview, we just had several minutes of conversation, a couple minutes of conversation. He didn't, but you did with Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
After the time that you told him on page 26, Bella's not in, this is line 7, Bella's not in DC custody, is that right?
That's what's there, yes.
And on page 27, he starts having a conversation with you. He starts having a conversation with you saying that he had interaction with the child, nothing that would cause harm to her. He says, like playing with her, talking with her, being around the house when she was around there, going out with the daughter, taking her to the park, things like that. He's describing a fairly sort of positive little domestic scene there, isn't he?
That's how it reads, yes.
He's telling you that he went to, that he played with her, talked with her, was around the house with her, going out, took her to the park, that kind of thing. Is that right?
Yes.
He's describing a relationship with you,
Yes.
with her, isn't he?
Yes.
But a page earlier, you had told him straight out she's not in DCF custody, right?
Yes.
And you had asked questions that went to the issue of whether someone had harmed Bella, isn't that right?
Yes.
And he didn't ask you anything about where she was or how she was, did he?
No concern whatsoever.
I have no further questions.
Looking at page 26 again, you say Rochelle is telling another story, right?
What line are you referring to, sir?
Well, in the portion beginning line 4, you go on and you say, because Bella's not in DCF custody and Rochelle is telling us something different about what happened to her, and that something different involves you, right?
Yes.
And so at that time he says, like what? He's asking you what you're accusing him of, right?
No, he's
Well,
asking me. He's asking me a question like what?
Like what do you think he's referring to when he says like what?
He's trying to find out. I interpreted that as he's trying to find out what information I know.
Well, you say something. I mean, he's already told you that he believes that Bella is in DCF custody, correct?
Say that again?
At this point, he has told you on probably 5 or 6 occasions that he believes that Bella is in DCF custody, correct?
Correct.
And now you tell him, well, Rochelle is telling us she's not in DCF custody, right?
Correct.
And you tell him Rochelle is telling something different, right?
Yes.
And so he says, like what? So he's asking you, what is Rochelle telling you that is different from what he's telling you, right?
Yes.
He still believes that she's in DCF custody.
I don't know what he believes at that
Well,
point.
Why you say, well, strike that. There's no reason in the context of that conversation for him to ask you, what's wrong with Bella?
Yes, there is.
Well, you haven't told him that anything's wrong with Bella.
Well, I told her that she wasn't in DCF custody. That would raise a question in the mind that for someone who's taken care of a baby, of course. If he believes she's in DCF custody and the mother of the child says she's not in DCF custody, my first response would be, well, where is she?
Well, isn't that exactly what he said? Like what was Rochelle telling you?
That is.
I have no further questions.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, subject to the rights to rebuttal evidence, if that were to eventuate, the people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts rest their case against Michael McCarthy, the defendant.
Okay. Before we proceed any further, I need to talk to the lawyers, and this does seem an appropriate time in any event to take the morning break. So we'll see you, why don't we make it a half an hour? The Commonwealth having rested, I'll turn to Mr. Shapiro, and again, understanding the defendant does not have to produce any evidence, ask you if you wish to call any witnesses.
The defense calls Eileen Hermine.
Thank you.
solemnly swear the testimony you shall give this court and jury, and the issue now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant at the bar shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God.
Right
Be
this
able to
way.
see, please?
Good morning. That microphone will make your voice louder, but you still need to speak up so that the jurors at the end there can hear you.
Good morning, Ms. Hermes. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury with your name and spell your first and last name?
Sure. My name is Eileen Hermes. My first name is Aileen. Last name Hermiz.
Hermiz?
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Hermes, where do you live?
I live in 115 Maxwell Street, apartment 4, Dorchester.
And how long have you lived there?
Since 2009.
And with whom do you live?
With my mom.
And what is your mother's name?
Hawa Hermes.
Okay. So you've lived there for like 8 years?
Yes, sir.
Now, at some point, did you meet a tenant who moved in by the name of Rochelle Bond?
Yes, sir.
And to the best of your recollection, when did you meet Miss Bond?
The most of the time I used to see her when I go back of the building.
Mm-hmm.
There is a little garden down there, so I see her outside smoking and baby Bella playing outside.
Okay. And do you remember, when it was that you first met Miss Bond?
No, sir.
Just so we're clear, I'm putting Exhibit 5 on the screen. And it should be showing up, but it's not.
By the end of this trial, we'll figure all this equipment out.
And do you recognize that picture?
I'm not seeing anything.
Yes, we need to put the juror screen and the other screens on. And we might want to adjust the viewfinder too, and take it out of the shiny folder too.
Just wait to everybody.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you recognize that photograph, Exhibit 5?
Yes, sir.
And who do you recognize that as?
Sorry?
Who do you recognize that as?
The mother of baby Bella.
Okay, Rochelle Bond.
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember when she moved in?
No.
Okay. Now, directing your attention to the summer months of 2015, were you living where you're now living?
Yes, sir.
And did you have any contact with Miss Bond, Rochelle Bond, during that summer in May, June, July, August?
Yes, she used to come up to my apartment. She used my phone, as I say already. She used to use my phone to make phone calls.
Mm. And how frequently would she come up and use your phone?
Like sometime twice a day, sometime it takes like weeks. She don't ask for it, and like it depends.
Okay. And when she came up, did you allow her to use the phone?
Yes.
And did you know the numbers she was calling?
No, she erased all the numbers before she gave it back.
Okay. And did she ever ask to use anything else?
The internet, but at the last period of time, she used to ask for a lot of things, so I say no.
Okay. And when she asked for the internet, did she ask for your password?
Yes, sir.
So she could use your password to access the internet?
Yes, sir.
Your Wi-Fi password?
Yes.
When she came to borrow your phone, did she explain why she wanted it?
Yeah, she said she didn't pay her phone bill, so she wanted to make important phone call.
Important phone call?
Yes.
Okay. And you say that sometimes she came up 2 times a day?
Yes, sir.
Sometimes more?
No, like that's the maximum,
Okay.
2 times.
And sometimes there'd be long periods of time between the time she came up?
Yeah, like let's say if she used it in the morning, in the night she come ask for it again.
Now, at some point, did you have any contact with her daughter?
I used to play a little bit with her when I go downstairs, like when I go, there is a trust, sorry to say it, but I used to go downstairs and when I see her, I play with her.
Okay. And when you were playing with her, about how old was the daughter?
She's like a year or so, she's a small baby.
Okay. And did you continue to have contact with her as she grew up?
No.
Well, when did you stop seeing her?
It's in the winter. I stopped seeing her because like in the summer they more often I go downstairs, but in the winter no. And I start working, so I didn't have really time to.
Okay. Well, in the summer of 2015, do you recall seeing her?
No.
At some point, did there come a time that police officers came to the house?
Sorry, can you repeat it?
Yes. At some time, did police officers come to the house?
To their house?
Yes, to
I never know.
Was there a day that you heard some police officers knocking on the outside door downstairs?
Only the day that when I came back and we found about the baby Bella case. That's the only time I saw the police.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I'm asking you about.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Tell us what happened that day before the police came.
I don't know what happened. She just came in the morning of the day the police came in. She asked my phone as usual. I gave it to her. She went downstairs, make a call, and she gave it back to me then. But she saw my mom in a car. She jumped to her. She asked her for a cigarette, and she gave her the cigarette. My mom in that time she says like she looked different, and that's it.
Okay. And can you describe how she looked that day?
She looked nervous, like she wasn't like always looked like. Yeah.
Okay, and was there ever a time that Miss Bond asked to use your phone that you wouldn't give it to her?
No.
So whenever she needed the phone and asked you, you allowed her to use it?
Yes.
Now, did you notice or did you know any any man that lived with her?
I already say that she used to have a different person every time, but the last boyfriend, he stayed for a long period of time.
Okay. And was he the person who had a small dog?
Yes, sir.
And
Okay,
just, Mr. Shipyard, just let's try not to leave, but the answer stands.
and do you remember, did you ever see that person with Bella?
Couple times, yes.
And how did they seem to get along?
He used to hold her, like when they go out of the apartment and go, I don't know, they go somewhere, he used to hold her on.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you remember about how long that man, the one with the small dog, lived there?
No.
Did you ever see any unusual things or see that man in an unusual situation?
Only once I saw him sleeping outside the apartment.
Okay. And do you know why he was sleeping outside the apartment?
It's not my business. I don't.
Did you know what the relationship or between that man and Bella was?
No.
On the basis of what you observed, what did you think?
He's the boyfriend.
Did you, during the summer that I'm referring to, did you see the man who you remember being there and Miss Bond together?
Yeah, they used to be together.
And what did you observe when you saw them together?
What do you mean?
Well, what did you observe them doing when you saw them together?
Like the normal people walking outside or sitting in a car.
Okay. Did you ever see seem to be unusual that summer?
She just like only the last day that she came up to me when she asked me, she was different. That's the only day I saw her like that.
But before that,
No.
before that day, was there anything that made you think that she was anything unusual about her?
No, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Hermes. I have no further questions.
It's still morning by 2 minutes, so good morning, Ms. Hermes.
Good morning.
My name's Dave Deacon. I just have I think just a very few questions for you. You mentioned that summer of 2015 that you saw Ms. Bond and her boyfriend walking together.
Yes, sir.
And sometimes I think you said you saw them in a car.
Yes, sir.
What kind of car was it?
I don't remember. I already said that.
But like color or big car, little car?
No, it's a little car, but I don't remember the color.
Okay. And how often would you see them in the car together?
It's not together. There used to be another person with them, but it's like I saw them 3 times. That's the only time I saw them.
In the car, I mean?
Yeah,
When you say another person, was that a man or a woman?
a man.
And what did he look like?
I don't know. It's dark. It was a night.
Tall or short?
It's in the
I don't
car.
know. That's okay. Do you know whose car it was?
No.
The third person that you saw with them in the car, did you ever see that person and Ms. Bond, just the two of them together?
I don't think so. No.
The day that the police came, that you were asked about, you said that was when baby Bella was, the case happened.
Yes.
Did either that day or in the days afterwards, did a police officer interview you?
After the case, yeah, the police came and interviewed me and my mom and my friend.
And did you tell them, I don't mean everything exactly, but did you tell them many of the same things that you've just told us today?
Yes, sir.
And no further questions.
Thank you.
Nothing further.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
The defendant called Nicole Marquis.
Stand right here. Raise your right hand and face the court.
You solemnly swear the testimony you shall give this court and jury, and that you now pending to the Commonwealth and the defendant at the bar shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Have a seat, please.
Good morning. So that microphone does help make your voice louder, but you still need to speak up so all members of the jury can hear you.
Sure.
Okay.
Good morning, Ms. Marquis.
Good morning.
My name is Jonathan Shapiro, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself to the jury by spelling your last name.
Sure. Marquis.
And your first name is Nicole?
Yes.
And where do you live, Ms. Marquis?
I live in Woburn, Massachusetts.
In
Woburn.
Woburn?
Yes.
And I'm going to direct your attention back to 2015. At that time, did you attend a New Horizons clinic in Brookline?
Yes.
And did you go there for therapy?
Yes.
In the course of going to New Horizons, did you have occasion to meet a woman by the name of Rochelle Bond?
Yes.
I'm just going to put up Exhibit 5 and ask, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And who is that?
Rochelle Bond.
How did you happen to meet Ms. Bond?
I met her in the waiting room at my doctor's office.
Okay. And did you have appointments on the same day?
Yes.
And was it a regular scheduled appointment?
Yes.
And how frequently did you see her?
Approximately weekly to every 2 weeks.
When you met her, was she alone?
Not always.
And who was she with?
Actually, sorry, she was always with someone. She was always with someone, sorry. She was with her daughter, and she was with a child that she babysat sometimes.
And this would be on a weekly basis?
Yes.
Now, how close did you get to Ms. Bond?
We talked about our children. I mean, I would talk to her there. I never went to her house. More of like an acquaintance when I would see her at the office.
What did you say about her house?
I never went to her house or
never
anything
went
like
to her.
that. Just like when I would see her there, I would talk to her. We would have conversations about our children.
Okay. And did she tell you anything about her her children?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
She had told me that she had 2 older children. One of them was with her mother. The other one was taken and I believe adopted out. And she had Bella.
Okay. And did she tell you how or why the older children were either adopted or with her mother? Either adopted or with her mother?
Maybe you heard it sideways.
Ms. Marquis, in these conversations with Ms. Bond about her children, did she indicate that the 2 older children had been taken by DCF or DSS?
I believe.
I'm sorry, you can say yes or no.
Oh,
Say
sorry. Yes.
So it's fair to say that your relationship with Ms. Bond was close enough that you talked about personal matters.
Yes.
Would all these conversations take place in the waiting room?
No.
Where would they take place?
Walking, in the store, on the train.
Did you both take the same train?
Sometimes, not always.
Okay. But sometimes you would go to the store to get something to eat or drink?
Yes.
And then go to the tea station?
Sometimes.
I'm going to direct your attention to sometime in March of 2015 and ask you, did you have an unusual conversation with Ms. Bond on that date?
Yes.
And tell us about the circumstances of that conversation, how it began, where it began, and then I'll ask you more.
Sure. So the conversation began in either CVS or Walgreens in Brookline, and she just didn't look her normal self. So I asked her, what was wrong, if something was going on, and that's when she proceeded to tell me that she was worried and that she felt like she told me that her parents were demonic and that when she was a child, her parents would try and pull her soul out of her body. And she told me that she was in fear that whatever was trying to go after her was now trying to go after her daughter to, I guess, get her attention, to make it, because she wouldn't allow. So basically, she proceeded to show me a mark on her head, and she had told me that her parents hit her in the head with a hammer when she was a child because during one of the times when they tried to pull her soul out of her body, she told me that her dad used to go up to, her dad had like some type of reptilia kind of eyes that would go from human to reptilia.
Objection.
As to?
The substance of the testimony.
Okay, well, as I understand it, this is not offered for the truth of the matter asserted. So I'm going to overrule it to the extent it's hearsay. It's not hearsay, overruled.
Okay, continue.
Sure.
Ms. Marquis.
So she just had told me basically that she was too strong and they were never able to pull her soul out of her body, and that this would go on for a period of time. And then we had left the store and had got onto the Green Line. And on the Green Line, she was still kind of talking about it a little bit, and there was a lady up on the platform, and Rochelle had kind of looked at the lady. She thought the lady was looking at her, but I don't even really know if she was. And Rochelle said like, "What are you looking at?" or something, and said, "She's one of them," and looked at me and said, "She's one of them," and just outburst in the train. And she then had asked me about time, what time it was, and said that I believe time loses quickly when you're with her, or something to that matter.
So was that pretty much the nature of the conversation?
Yes.
Let me ask you this, was her daughter with her on that occasion?
No.
And you indicated it was probably in March of 2015?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Did Ms. Bond express any concern about what was getting into her daughter?
What do you mean?
Well, you said that that she was worried about something happening to her daughter that might affect her.
Yes, I believe she was more insinuating that they were trying to use her daughter to get like her attention almost, because they still wanted her to take her soul, I assume.
That is the demons?
Yes.
What now? When you mentioned this other woman who Rochelle talked to, where were you at that time?
So on the Green Line, there is 2 levels. There's a bottom flat platform where the train kind of moves. Then there's stairs that go up, and there's seats that face each other. She was sitting on the seats that face each other, and we were on the bottom platform.
So this is on the train platform, not on the train?
No, on the train there's a platform. So the train has one level, and then it has like 3 stairs that go up, and it has another level, and there's seats that face each other.
Okay, so you were on one side of the train?
Yeah, we were approximately from here to the middle of the jury area.
Maybe 15 feet?
Yeah, approximately.
And were you facing the woman, or was it at an angle?
I was facing sideways. Rochelle was facing forward, and the woman was facing sideways also.
So was the woman facing Rochelle?
No, she was facing the person in front of her on the other side.
And so, did Rochelle talk to that woman?
Not really. She just outburst about the woman staring at her, or looking at her, or something about that.
And do you know whether the woman heard her?
I believe so. She was pretty loud.
And what did she say about the woman?
She just said something about her looking at her, and it's really hard to explain. It was almost like she was trying to talk to me, but talking to the woman very quietly. Almost like she was trying to talk, like, I don't know, how to mind talking to her. I mean, the lady wasn't really paying attention to her, and she just kept, like, whispering out loud about the lady, saying that she was one of them, and I really don't remember what else.
Did you ask Rochelle what she meant when she said she's one of them, or?
I don't think so. I just kind of was watching and listening.
When she talked about her parents, did she say anything about why she thought they were demons, or what they did as demons?
She had mentioned that about the dad's eyes being from human to reptilia, and something about either the mother or the father being the leader of the, I guess, demonic people. I'm not really sure how to put it. But she really didn't say much. She just said that they would try and pull her soul out of her body.
And did you say anything to her in response to her saying that her mother was a demon or demonic?
I just kind of listened. It was probably the weirdest conversation I've ever had. I just asked her questions and listened to her, and that's about it.
After that day, did you ever see Rochelle Bond again?
No.
Now, at some point, did you become aware that the body of a young girl had washed up on Deer Island?
Yes.
And when was that, to the best of your recollection?
June, maybe?
Was it about the time that the body was discovered?
Yes.
And when, at some point after that, did you see any composite pictures of that baby?
Yes.
And where did you see them?
On Facebook, the news, all over the place.
Okay. When you saw it on the news, was that the first place you saw it?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, when you saw the composite picture of the girl that had washed up on the beach, what did you do?
At first, I just looked at it, and then I realized it looked familiar. And when I realized who she looked like, I went on Rochelle's Facebook page and screenshotted a picture of Bella and put them side by side and looked back and forth at them.
I'm going to put a photograph on the screen and ask if you can identify that.
That is...
Sorry, you want to focus it a little bit? Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, it hasn't been admitted yet, right? So let's... So it should show on your screen.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. You see that on your screen?
Yes.
And can you identify that?
Sure. To the left is Baby Doe, and to the right is Bella Bond.
And how did you, where was this photograph, or these two photographs?
The Baby Doe, I believe, is from one of the news stations, and the picture of Bella is from Rochelle's Facebook page.
And how did you put them side by side?
I screenshotted them and just looked at them back and forth.
And what, if anything, did you do as a result of that?
What was that question? Sorry.
I say, is it fair to say that you saw a resemblance?
Oh, yes. I noticed the baby hair. That was the first indicator that I thought it was her. The age is what threw me off originally.
What, if anything, did you do as a result of seeing that?
I called the police.
Okay. And do you know when you called the police?
In July, I believe July 13th.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to move the admission of this is the next.
No objection.
We'll admit that. Exhibit 155.
I'm publishing Exhibit 155, This is the screenshot that you created on the basis of your recognition of similarities between Baby Doe and Rochelle Bond's daughter.
Yes.
And do you recall approximately when this took place? That is, when you made this?
Early.
And so, when you saw the similarity, what did you do?
I said I called the police, and I called anonymously, and first I called off the poster. I called one number, and I don't think I got through. I called the next number, and I dialed it wrong. And the third number I called, I talked to a police officer, I guess, and I had told them that I thought that Baby Doe resembled a girl named Rochelle Bond's daughter, Bella, and I wasn't sure of her last name, Bella's last name, because I wasn't sure if she had her father's last name or her mother's. And I wasn't sure where she lived. I just told them that Rochelle Bond had a Facebook and that you could see the picture on the Facebook. And I remember they asked me why I was concerned or something to that matter, and I just said the last time I saw her, she was acting kind of strange, and I didn't want to leave my name, and I left it at that.
Did you attempt to find out when you had made the calls to the police that you just referred to?
Yes.
And what did you do?
I had to go through phone records and look at numbers and try to find numbers that were on the poster on the phone records.
Okay. And did you do that?
Yes.
I'm going to show you a 2-page document. I'm showing you the first page and then the second page.
Yes.
Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
And what does it show?
It's you have to bring it up a little bit. So that would be the first number that I called off the poster.
Okay. Well, just generally, does this document reflect the time and the day that you called the numbers, the police numbers, in connection with your tip?
Yes.
I offer this as the next exhibit.
Mr. Beacon?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 156. So this is appears to be a short list of telephone numbers, Exhibit 156.
I'm going to put 156 back on the screen. The first highlighted number, is that the number you called at the date and time you called it?
Yes.
So that's July 13th, 2015. It was a 1-minute call, and it was to 617-539-5806.
Yes.
And do you know what number that was?
One of the police stations, I'm not sure which one.
Okay. I'm putting it on a screen just for you. Is this a copy of the composite photograph with the numbers, the tip numbers to call that you saw back in July of 2015?
Yes.
And does this have the numbers that you called?
Yes.
I offer this as the next exhibit. So publishing exhibit 156 is the first number that you called the 617-539-5806 number, the Winthrop police number?
Yes.
And you had, according to this record that's in evidence as 156, a 1-minute call.
Yes.
And what took place on that call?
I don't think I got through, and I think that's why it was only a minute.
Okay. So, did you make another call?
Yes.
And this is the second page of 156. And was the second call to, on July 13th, a few minutes later, 4 minutes later, and that number is 508-821-2121.
Yes.
And what happened as a result of that call?
I dialed the wrong number.
Okay. And were you trying to dial the Mass State Police Communications Section, 508-820-2121?
Yes.
And so you misdialed that?
Yes.
And did anything happen?
I didn't realize it. I just called the next one.
Okay, so you didn't get through to anyone on that?
No.
And so the next number was called again 4 minutes later at July 13th at would be 5 o'clock, 1700 hours. And that number was 617-727-8817. And that is the Suffolk County State Police Detective Unit.
Yes.
And you had a 2-minute and 55-second call with whoever answered that tip line.
Yes.
And what did you tell that person?
That was the one that I told that I thought that the baby doe poster looked like a woman I knew, Rochelle Bond's daughter, Bella. I wasn't sure of Bella's last name. And I told them, I didn't know Rochelle's address. I knew she lived in Boston. I told them that she had a Facebook page under Rochelle Bond and that Bella's pictures were on there. And he asked something about a reason why I was calling, any concerns or something to that matter. And I said the last time I saw her, she was acting kind of strange, and I just left it at that.
And was this call anonymous?
Yes.
And so nobody ever got back to you?
No.
And this was July 13th, which would have been about 2 weeks after the body was discovered?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at some later point, did you call the police again?
Yes.
And when was that?
After it aired on the news that the body that was found was Bella Bond.
And what did you do at that time?
I called back anonymously again, and I told them that I had called back in July anonymously, and I wanted to call back and give them some more information about what had happened the last time I saw Rochelle.
And did you do that over the phone?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point, did the police contact you?
That was also anonymously when I called that time.
You?
That was also anonymously when I called that time. I called back again, and I talked to them, and they wanted my name, and I still wanted to keep it anonymous, and I called back the third time and finally gave them my name.
Okay. And when you called back the second time anonymously, did you give them any further information?
I believe so. I don't really remember.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But what you've testified to today is all of the information that you at some point had and gave to the police?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Marquis. I have no further questions.
Good afternoon, Ms. Marquis. You live at 28 Ward Street in Woburn, is that right?
Yes.
And do you still have the same cell phone number that you had back in 2015?
No.
Do you remember what your cell phone number was back in 2015?
5077. I'm not positive.
857
258
258
5077.
5077.
Not sure.
When did you have the records? When did you review these records that are now an exhibit in the case?
In December, I think, of 2015.
December of 2015?
I think so.
And do you still have? How did you get those records?
So it wasn't from my phone, it was from my mom's phone, and she had called the phone company and they gave her the records. I don't remember. It's not the same now, I don't remember what it was.
Did you get some more records from the phone company when you had your mom select these records?
I don't understand what you mean.
I guess what I'm saying is you must have sent them your mom's cell phone number then to get these records, right?
Oh, she called up the phone company. No.
Okay, so you could email them to anyone you wanted to, is that right?
Yes.
And do they list the call number? In other words, do they have your mother's cell phone number on them?
I'd have to look at them, I don't remember.
Let me ask you, you first met Ms. Bond at your doctor's office, is that right?
Yes.
And you thought that was December of when? Of what year?
When I met Rochelle?
Yeah.
2000, I'm not even sure, 14, 15?
December of 2015 would be after baby Doe was found. So.
Oh, so 14.
Okay. And you say you saw her approximately 20 times?
Yes.
She came in, when she came in, was she usually by herself or usually with someone?
With someone.
Who's that?
In the beginning it was Bella and a child she babysat.
And when you say in the beginning, did that change over time?
Yes.
How?
The child she babysat didn't come along with her anymore.
What sort of child was it? How old?
A little older than Bella, maybe like 4.
Boy or girl?
Boy.
Do you remember what he looked like?
He was African American.
How did you know that she was babysitting him?
She told me.
Okay. How?
Yes.
So every time, and you thought that was March of 2015?
I think so.
Could you be off one way or the other?
Yeah, it's possible.
If you think, if you're off, are you likely to be off like earlier? It could have been February, or earlier, like it could have been April or May.
Honestly, I have no idea. I just know that it was Christmas time. I saw her and talked to her, and I'm going by it still being cold.
Right.
So I'm assuming maybe.
But you said you saw her 20 times. Is that right?
Approximately.
Right. I understand.
Yeah.
I'm not holding you to the number 20, but about 20 times.
Yeah.
And that was either weekly or every 2 weeks.
Yeah, or if she had a different time or something, I wouldn't see her. So.
Right. So it could be. But what I'm saying is, if it were weekly,
Mm-hmm.
just once a week, that would be 20 weeks after Christmas. Is that right?
I guess. I'm not sure.
So
Yeah.
20 weeks after Christmas would be May.
Okay, so maybe it wasn't 20 times. Maybe it was less. That was just an approximate guess. So.
Well, that's fine. Are you pretty sure it's March, or are you kind of approximating?
Definitely approximating, not positive.
Because it can be cold outside in Boston in June, right?
Yeah.
When it was cold outside.
Yes.
Okay. So could have been April.
Could have been.
Could have been May.
Could have been.
Conceivably, and I'm not pushing this too far, but conceivably could have been early June.
I don't think so, but.
Sometime March and May.
Yes.
Okay.
She always seemed to take care of Bella. Bella always seemed well taken care of.
And what is it that when you think back and you're thinking about she seemed to take care of, what do you mean by that? Like, what specifically were you seeing that maybe?
For example, in the wintertime, she would come, with boots on, a coat, a blanket. She looked well fed. I mean, her interactions with her daughter, talking to her.
Tell us a little bit about those interactions. I mean, obviously, I don't expect you to remember, long conversations, but what do you mean when you say that interactions were good?
Just like getting Bella out of the carriage, taking her coat off if she wanted something, getting it for her, taking her to the store, talking about her to me. She just seemed like she cared about her daughter.
Did it seem to you that she loved her?
Yes.
And just to be clear, in all those times you saw her, did you see anything different from that other than that she loved her daughter?
No.
It sounds like it's fair to say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're fair to say that she was trying to be a good mother to Bella.
Yes.
Did you ever see her speak or act harshly toward her?
No.
What about her interactions with the boy that she was babysitting? I know you didn't see them as much, but how did it seem to you that she interacted with the boy that she was babysitting?
She treated him fine. I mean, he was also well dressed and taken care of.
And when you say treated him fine, fine can mean a lot of different things. Like fine can mean really nice or just okay.
Nice.
Huh?
No, she treated him nice, like she was his own, like her child.
Meaning, like she treated Bella?
Yes.
So, loving?
Yes.
Caring?
Yes.
I assume spoke to both Bella and the boy in a friendly tone of voice like a parent would to a child?
Yes.
And you said you talked with her about things that mothers talk about?
Yes.
Kids?
Yes.
Family, and that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And then you told us about the strange conversation that you had with her that concerned you.
Yes.
Before that day,
No.
had you ever seen her behavior even close to that way?
No.
And that's the first day that you ever saw her without Bella, right?
Yes.
Had she ever mentioned anything about demons or reptilian eyes or anything before that day?
No.
So I guess what I'm asking is, just to be clear, any sign whatsoever from her previous behavior all those times she was with Bella that gave you any kind of inkling that there might be a conversation like this on the Green Line?
No.
And that day was the first day that you saw her without her daughter, is that right?
Yes.
No further questions. When you called the different lines in July, the first call you made didn't get through?
I don't really remember.
It's okay.
Yeah.
There was one that you didn't get through.
Yes.
One that you misdialed.
Yes.
And one when you spoke to somebody.
Yes.
And that was the conversation you described about the questions they asked you and that kind of thing. Is that
Yes.
right? All those were anonymous.
Yes.
Then after Bella was found, identified, I mean not found, after she was identified in September, you called back, is that right?
Yes.
Anonymously?
Yes.
Was that the Winthrop Police Department?
I think so.
And then you called them back again.
Yes.
And gave your name, is that right?
I think I talked to them again and then gave my name. I believe I called 3 times.
And when you gave your name to Winthrop Police, they asked you to come in and
Yeah, they came to my house.
a cruiser came.
Yes.
Picked you up.
No, they came, gave me a, I believe a subpoena.
Right, they gave you, okay,
Yeah.
they gave you a subpoena. Oh, then so you came in on your own.
Yes. I met a police officer and he, not that day, but a different day, and he walked me into the courthouse.
Okay, brought you and came with you, and you testified in the grand jury in this case. Is that
Yes.
right? I apologize, Your Honor, but thank you.
Ms. Marquis, in talking about personal matters with Ms. Bond, did she ever talk about boyfriends?
Yes.
And who did she mention, if anyone?
A man named Keith.
And did she say...
As to whether this is outside the scope of cross, Mr. Shapiro?
I think it was brought up by questions concerning questioning about a personal matter.
Okay, I'll allow it. Well, I thought there was some questions about the conversation that she had with Rochelle, a little bit. I'm reviewing my notes. Hold on. I'm going to allow it. There is this rule, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, that so that we don't continue to go back and forth, that the next questioner, after there's been direct and cross, has to stay within the scope of the previous questioning. It's so that we have some endpoint, but I'm going to allow this.
So, Ms. Marquis, you say that Rochelle mentioned a boyfriend by the name of Keith?
Yes.
Was that the only boyfriend she ever mentioned?
Yes.
Did she ever mention a Michael McCarthy?
No.
What did she tell you about Keith?
That she thought...
Okay, I'm sustained.
Was the time that you saw Ms. Bond, what you think was March, was that the last time you saw her?
Yes.
Did you continue going to that particular New Horizons after that?
Yes.
Do you know if Ms. Bond discontinued going to New Horizons at about the time you last saw her?
Objection, that basis of knowledge.
All you can say is you never saw her again, correct?
Yes.
You indicated that that in all your prior interactions with Ms. Bond, she seemed loving and caring with respect to her daughter.
Yes.
Was that one of the reasons you were so surprised at the unusual conversation you had in March?
One of the reasons, yes.
Was there any other reason?
It was just so strange.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
The defense calls Ingrid Pereira.
Raise your right hand and face the court. You solemnly swear the testimony you shall give this court and jury and the issue now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant the bar shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Have a seat, please.
Good afternoon. That microphone does help make your voice louder.
Okay,
Just
thank
keep
you.
it up. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Pereira.
Good afternoon.
Would you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your first and last names?
Sure. Hi, my name is Ingrid Perlera, I-N-G-R-I-D, and Perlera, B as in Peter, E-R-L-E-R-A.
Ms. Pereira, how are you employed at the present time?
Am I employed?
How are you employed?
Oh, I work at Wynn Residential.
Okay. And what is your job?
I'm administrative assistant for management office.
And what are your duties?
I do leasing. I do recertifications for current residents. I do unit inspections. I do phone calls for current residents. I do unit inspections. I do phone calls, paperwork, office paperwork.
And how long have you worked for this company?
Since 2014.
And when you say recertifications, what are you referring to?
Every year, our current residents have to go through the process of income and assets to make sure they're in compliance for a tax credit housing.
Okay. And would you say in compliance with what?
There are certain income limits that they have to meet and certain requirements that they have to meet in order to be legible, if it's another word for compliance.
And is that because the housing is subsidized by some public agency?
Yes.
And who provides the housing subsidies?
It's different agencies involved.
But the landlord or the management company, are they responsible for ensuring that all of the tenants are in compliance with the eligibility requirements?
Yes.
Now, directing your attention to did you conduct an inspection of an apartment at 115 Maxwell Street?
Yes.
And would you describe what the purpose of this inspection was?
We do inspections every year, just to make sure that everything is good in the apartment. We check that if something is defective or needs to be fixed, we go back and do it.
Say that again?
To make sure that everything is good in the apartment, like maintenance issues.
And if something is wrong in the apartment, what do you do about it?
So we have a report and we check off whatever we find that needs to be fixed. And then we go back and do, it's called a work order, which is a maintenance request. And then our maintenance staff will go back to the apartment and fix it.
And as a general rule, about how long does it take, if there's something wrong with the apartment, for the maintenance staff to repair it?
It really depends how big the site is. Common Square is one of the biggest sites, so it might take up to 2 weeks for us to go back.
Okay. Does it depend upon how important or significant the need for repair is?
If it's an emergency, like a small detector or water leak or anything for that effect, we go the same day.
Now, are there records that are maintained by your management company with respect to the inspections that you do?
Yes.
I'm going to put a document on the screen here, and can you see it?
Yes.
And can you identify what that is?
It's the unit inspection form that we use.
And does it indicate on this form what apartment it is?
Yes.
And what apartment was it?
115 Maxwell number 2.
And does it indicate who the apartment resident was?
Yes.
Who was it?
Rochelle Bond.
And does this form reflect the result of the inspection?
Yes.
And who went to the inspection? That is, who conducted the inspection?
Myself and a maintenance tech.
And who is the maintenance tech?
Derek Williams.
And at this point, I offer this as the...
No objection.
In addition to...
You want to publish it to the jury?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Okay. On the screen is Exhibit 158, which is the apartment inspection form that you used on July 14th of 2015.
Correct.
And do you sign it?
At the time, it was signed by the assistant property manager. Usually only managers can sign it.
Okay. Was that person present?
No.
Okay, so after the inspection, This person signed it at the office.
Yes.
Now, you were interviewed about this matter quite some time ago by the police, were you not?
Correct.
And what I'm going to ask you about is, would you describe what took place when you went to the inspection? And first of all, let me ask you, do you recall approximately what time it was?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Do you know what time these inspections were generally conducted?
Sometimes it takes all day. We do a lot of apartments at once.
So you say you do a lot of apartments in one day?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and do you remember back then how many apartments you did on this day?
No.
So describe what happened during this inspection.
Just try to get a little closer to the
Okay.
microphone. There you go.
There's not much I recall. We went and we checked off everything on the form. Rochelle was there. We say hi.
Was anybody besides Rochelle there?
Yes.
And who was there?
It was a male. I never seen him.
Okay. And can you describe that male?
I don't remember.
Okay. Well, let me show you a document. And I'm going to ask if you just read to yourself paragraph 3.
Okay.
To yourself. Have you read it?
Yes.
And does that refresh your recollection as to what the male looked like?
No. It's just a blur to me. I don't really remember.
Don't remember at all.
I remember now that I'm reading this that I did ask her for the baby, and she said it was with her mom.
And did she say why the baby was with her mom?
No, we didn't talk much.
But again, you read this and it does refresh your recollection to a certain extent.
Yes.
All right, I want you to tell me, to the best of your recollection, based upon reading the document, if you can describe the...
Okay. So she says she does not remember, even after reading this document, what this man looked like. But if you want to ask her another question.
Now, when you met with Miss Bond, did you have any conversation with her?
No.
Well, you just said that she told you that Bella, or the baby, was with her mother.
Well, yes, that was it. That was the only conversation we had.
Did you ask her where her daughter was?
I asked her where the baby was, and she said it was with her mom.
Okay. And did she give any further explanation?
No.
And can you describe how Ms. Bond looked at that time? Describe her demeanor?
I can't really remember. It was so quick.
Well, did anything appear to be unusual about her?
No.
When you do the inspection, do you inspect, I'm putting up 158, do you inspect all of these items that are checked off?
Yes.
And who does the actual inspection?
We both do it. It's always two people.
And whose writing is on this form?
Mine.
On the bottom on the left, one of the items says, "Can't open back door."
Yes.
Do you remember that?
No.
Do you know if that was repaired?
It had to be.
It had to be.
Yes.
Because it's a fire code violation?
It's a finding. All the findings need to be repaired.
Well, is this a particular important finding?
Yes.
Because the fire code requires 2 means of egress from every apartment, correct?
Correct.
And so you would need to repair a blocked means of egress.
Yes.
Would you say this would be an emergency?
Yes.
So it would have been repaired that day?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had... So just so the jury knows, that's 158, and this is the item that I was referring to, "Can't open back door," which was recorded by you and would have been repaired that day.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Valero. I have no further questions.
So, Ms. Perlera, back in the fall of 2015, Massachusetts State Police troopers came to your office and interviewed you about this, isn't that right?
Yes.
And they asked you, I'm not saying exactly everything, but they asked you basically about all these same things, right?
Yes.
Had you ever been in Ms. Bond's apartment before July 14 of 2015?
No.
And were you ever back in her apartment when it was her apartment? I don't mean after, when it turned over, but in other words, other than that day, were you ever in Ms. Bond's apartment when it was Ms. Bond's apartment?
No.
And do you remember what was wrong with the back door?
No.
Do you remember who fixed it?
No.
Do you remember what was involved in fixing it? Like how it had to be fixed?
No.
And do you know whether the fix took? In other words, do you know whether there was any recurrence of that problem?
No.
Nothing further.
Okay. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take the lunch break now and have you come back to resume a testimony at 2 o'clock with my reminder not to talk with each other about the case.